Hello and welcome to a Institute for Sound Public Policy live stream. This is a first for us. We've typically been recording in the past, but this time we're going to go live. It is a bit of an experiment, but what's great about today is I have Michael Yon joining the show. Michael is a foreign correspondent who is no stranger to the world's hotspots, and right now he is in Guatemala. And he is doing reporting on Panama, a lot of work in Latin America. The last time I met with Michael was back in August of this year. We were in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas, where he and his faithful band of correspondents were reporting on the border crisis as it was impacting the state of Texas. So without any further ado, Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you. That's right. We met on Operation Burning Edge, which is ongoing. That's why I'm in Guatemala now. As you know, I just left Belize and I just left Mexico and I just left Panama. I'm down here taking a tour of the area as I frequently do, and spend months at a time down here. Right now, interestingly, Guatemala is one of those places we see people, Guatemalans, crossing the border into the United States every day. And Americans will say, oh, they're just coming for a better life, and they're so poor and starving in Guatemala. And, actually, right about 1 or 2 blocks from me right now is a Starbucks. And then there's a McDonald's around the corner. And then there's some of the best steakhouse. They have incredible steaks here that will actually rival or even beat Texas. It's unbelievable, the steaks you can get here, as opposed to Panama. Their steaks are not so
it's
good.
Funny. Ava Longoria, who is a naturalized citizen of the U.S., said she's not a vegetarian, but she doesn't like to eat meat in the United States. But you'd have no trouble in Argentina or other places in South and Latin America.
Oh, these steaks are unbelievable. And in Colombia, too, steaks are so good. But Panama, not so much. I don't know why. I mean, I've got some
too many Americans.
I asked Chuck Holton that and some other friends, and Chuck says, well, they export the best beef. I don't know why. But the bottom line is, there's also, this is one of those so-called poor countries where there's a Walmart down the road, right? And it's the same in Mexico. Like I was down with Ann Vandersteel and Masako Ganaha and Taylor Kramer and some others. We went up to Mexico.
I saw a picture that Taylor had posted on social media in Guatemala City. I'm like, Taylor, are you down with Michael and Ann and everyone else? And he's like, oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, we've been taking him around because he shows a lot of promise down on the Texas-Mexico border. And so we've agreed to take him in, and he's really doing some incredible.
He's a top flight guy. So, I did a short podcast with him. He reminds me a lot of you, Michael. He's toujours en avant, always out front, and willing to do the hard work.
He is, and he's up there with the Rubin brothers right now, muckraker.com, who just walked through the Darien Gap. So they're all together right now. And so they're doing – so I asked them to fly into Guatemala along with Joseph Humeyer, whom you know, very smart man, brilliant man. I asked him and Ann Vandersteel and Masako Ganaha and the Rubin brothers and Taylor Kramer all to meet in Guatemala, which we did for a couple of days to discuss what we're seeing and our ideas about what's actually going on. So our summit is ended this time, and everybody's gone home. Masako and I are still here researching, meeting with people. Very interesting. We met with somebody yesterday, one of the Jewish businessmen here, and it's very interesting. There's about 1,000 Jews here in Guatemala, and this country is very pro-Israel and pro-Jewish. Right. And for instance, there's a giant Star of David not far from me down on the road in a traffic circle. Giant, like, I don't know, 15 feet tall, probably 15 feet tall or 20 feet tall. And then there's a street here named Jerusalem, the capital of Israel, is the name of the street. Calle Jerusalem de Capital, or Capital de Israel. It's kind of interesting, these little things that you learn anthropologically. There you go. Yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah, I'm pulling that up right now. That's you had some great footage there, Michael, that you had shared with us on Signal.
Yeah, did you expect to see that?
No, not even a little bit. Not even a little bit, Michael. So I'll stop that right now and put the camera back to us. All
Yeah,
right, but
and yeah, and so and so we, next after this, I'm going to hit some other Central American countries, but now Panama, obviously, where we spend so much
yeah,
time.
Michael, and I'm so glad to be talking to you today. What is going on in Panama? I mean, that was an area that I thought was socially quiescent. Who'd have to worry about it? What is going on there?
For the last few years, friends have been asking me, should I move to Panama? I mean, you wouldn't believe how many people, and Costa Rica and this, such and so forth. And I've been telling them no place in Central America is going to be safe, period,
Hmm.
including Panama. And some are like, no, are you kidding, Panama? And I'm like, you're not understanding what's going on. Sit down, school's in. The Silk Road 2.0 is clearly being constructed, right? For instance, down in Darien province, I was just down there again. I spend months at a time down in Darien. Darien is the province in Panama right next to Colombia, right? There it is. You can see on the. I wish I could point to it because I don't have a laser pointer for your screen,
Oh, I
but
have
yeah,
the
right.
mouse going.
You see, this map came from a book that I bought, Panama. I think I've sent you the cover of that book, and
Right.
that map is inside the book. But you can see that the Chinese Communist Party is working on building a railway and a road through the Darien province, and they're started. It's already under construction. I mean, I've been down there, looking at the bridge they're building over Rio Chuquinaca down in Darien and that sort of thing. So, bottom line is, Panama is one of the most vital terrains on planet. There's the book right there.
Mm-hmm.
Panama is one of the most vital terrains on planet Earth. Right, almost nothing matches Panama on the importance for the world and especially for the United States. And so, why? Numerous reasons. One is the Panama Canal. That's quite obvious. And that's like an artery. I mean, that's a main artery for our trade. And we'll get to the Panama Canal in a moment. The next is that Darien Gap, which is being opened up. That's another artery to the United States, right? This is an invasion artery. Already we have thousands per day coming in, say 5 or 6 thousand. I think it'll go up to about 10,000, say in roughly January, February, and have reasons to say that. One is dry season. Another is they're building more camps in Darien. Anyway, long story short, Darien is an invasion corridor to the United States. Also, it's part of Silk Road 2.0, right? As is the Panama Canal. So, as you and I were up in RGV Valley, it's not a coincidence that we spent so much time up there. RGV Valley also is on the Silk Road that goes right through here in Guatemala and Belize. That's why I was just in Belize. If you look at the map, it goes right up. Belize, you look at Belize, the whole ecosystem of NGOs is there. We were just there. IOM is there. Even though there's not many quote unquote migrants in Belize yet, they're coming. When IOM sets up office in your neighborhood or in your country, that means something's about to happen, right? And so, and it is. It's got a big office in Belize City. And if you go to the UNHCR office in Belmopan, which is the capital of Belize, Belize City is not the capital. It's Belmopan. If you go there, to the UNHCR office, it's right beside the U.S. Embassy, like 40 or 50 meters away. It's like a half a football field length away from the front gate of the U.S. Embassy. And this is normal in many places around the world where the UN headquarters is right next to the U.S. Embassy. Not a coincidence that U.S. aid uses the UN as an implement to of policy, right? And the United States is the one driving most of the invasion into the United States, while you have Biden and Governor, quote unquote, Governor Abbott of Texas, Greg Abbott. He's a World Economic Forum member. That's all you need to know about him. That's like saying, hey, but he's a good guy, but he's a member of the Nazi Party. Those things just kind of don't go together. If you're a member of the World Economic Forum, you are the enemy of the people of the United States. Greg Abbott is openly a member of the World Economic Forum. He does not hide it. His biography is on their website, as is Bibi Netanyahu in Israel. He's an open member of the World Economic Forum. And these are the people driving the migration issues, right? Driving them actually quite hard, right? And so the United States, the new leader of IOM, which is, or OIM, depending on which language you speak, the International Organization for Migration, is led by a lady named Amy Pope. And she's an American. She took charge about roughly 2 months ago, and Amy Pope brags that the United States is the principal funder of IOM. IOM is the principal pump of the migrants, right? Of the aliens. I shouldn't call them migrants. This is an invasion, and it's not a border crisis, by the way. It's for two reasons. One is there's no border. So you can't have a border crisis when you have no border. And it's not a crisis. A crisis is something, maybe a mental crisis that you get through. This is not a crisis. This is a war. We have no border and we are at war. This is an invasion population. This is a replacement population, mostly military age. You already know all this. A lot of people still don't. And people ask me all the time, who's behind it? And I'll say,
but the important thing, Michael, and we talked about this earlier, most people don't. I might know it. I've experienced a lot of it, but a lot of people are just watching mainstream media. They're oblivious to what's really going on.
Watch. I'm gonna make a demonstration of information war. I'm going to say something, and what's the first thing that comes to the people who are watching this? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? CNN is a terrible organization. CNN is a liar. They embed with Hamas, or actually, let's say Hamas embeds with CNN. They never tell the truth. They're left-wing media. Now, for a lot of people, the first thing that will come to their mind is Fox News, right? And so if Fox was the first thing that came to your mind, that is actually an information war. That's a symptom of an information war, because these two are actually what's called kayfabe, right? And it's a wrestling term, kayfabe, Kayfabe, where the big players own both parties. So these people fight each other, but they both ultimately get their message out, right?
Yeah, outcome's already been decided. It's entertainment. It's not sport.
That's right. And now there are real fights that really will happen in the kayfabe, and that's why it gets confusing. People will be like, well, that was real, and that guy's honest, and yeah, so it gets confusing. But ultimately, boiling it down, these two parties are fighting each other as wrestlers, and both of those wrestlers are owned by the company.
Interesting. So let's talk about the current civil unrest in Panama. And how does that fit into, because about a year and a half ago, you and I did a podcast and you had talked about the weaponization of migration. How is this all coming together right now? We saw it there at the Texas border, where we literally have tens of thousands of people coming across every week into the United States. And it's obviously an invasion. And we are seeing how these new arrivals can be weaponized and made very militant to shape domestic and foreign policy here in the U.S.
Yeah, it's an old game, the weaponization of migration. It never ends, right? And so it's an old game. It's been going on since before the Roman times. The Goths came in, basically destroyed Rome. I mean, it happens all the time. Like, for instance, when I was in Hong Kong in 2019 and 2020, keep in mind, I spent about 18 years across Asia, including a year in and around China. You look at the Han Chinese, they did a weaponized migration into Tibet. I was in Tibet. You see that they push the Tibetans out or kill a bunch of them. They kill a bunch, and many of the rest flee to places like Nepal and India, United States. And then you replace them with your own people. That's a weaponized. Likewise, in Hong Kong, when I was there in Hong Kong, you'll see the Chinese Communist Party was just drip, drop, putting a small amount of mainland Chinese into Hong Kong for year after year. But those Chinese that were coming to Hong Kong weren't coming just to open Chinese restaurants. They were coming to become teachers. Teachers, that's vital terrain right there. They were joining the police force, intelligence. They were going into, they were sending over scientists and doctors. They were taking over every control mechanism and influence center, right? And so when it came time for the final spasms in 2014, I was actually in the Thai coup, so I didn't get to go over to the umbrella uprising there. But I did go in 2019, and I was there until I got kicked out in 2020 for 7 months that time. And you could see that's what the Chinese Communist Party took years and years to set the table to finally just take it, right? They're patient. They take a long-term view, and they just start growing teak wood, right? You don't just throw little teak saplings into the soil and expect to harvest those and make furniture out of them the next day, And the Chinese Communist Party, they're basically farmers, just like the Russians, just like we have been as well. And if our information war farmers is what I'm saying. And long-term migration strategies, the United States, the let's say the core Americans, I separate people between Americans and U.S. citizens. There's a big difference. I'm an American. I'm totally American to my core, right? Then there are people like, the Somali thing, who's a Congress lady, who is a U.S. citizen, apparently. I guess she's a U.S. citizen. Or the Haitian thing that's married to the CNN woman. You know what I mean? These are U.S. citizens. They're not Americans. They will never be Americans. They're puppets, right? But then there are other Americans that have never, and I see them all over the time, all over the world. There are Americans, I call them Americans, who are not U.S. citizens, who've never been to America and who never want to go to America, and they don't even speak English, right? I mean, American is a different sort of person. It's freedom-loving people who tend to be quite conservative, not always, but tend to be quite conservative, and tend to have a more, we don't have a malicious view on the world that we wish to, destroy the world. Now, there are a lot of Americans who but the bottom line is American and U.S. citizens are two different things. And you see a lot of American thought here, even in little Guatemala. People who want freedom, they want small government. Unfortunately, this is, like you said earlier, the Brazilianization of the world. There's armed guards in front of all the stores here. I walked by a McDonald's yesterday, and there's 2 armed guards out front, right? So,
and we're going to see that here in the U.S.
Matt Bracken's been predicting that. Yep.
Yeah, because we're bringing in so many poor, and it is really, you look at who's pushing back in cities like Chicago, New York City. It's our most vulnerable group of people that do rely on government subsidies of one sort, which are being cut short, and these new arrivals, these illegal aliens, are being prioritized over them. So what it's going to do is just add to the general poverty of the population, and ultimately that's going to require businesses to invest more in security, to invest in armed guards. You're going to start seeing people walling themselves off who have stuff and want to protect it from people that want it. Yeah, it's a what would you call this? It is it's a downward slope for us at this point.
Can I interject something on the poverty issue that you mentioned? Mm-hmm. I do travel a lot. I spend most of my life overseas, maybe 2/3 of my life, almost most of my adult life, right? This is my 95th country. I've been here for about a week, right? And so when I talk about going to 95 countries, I don't mean airport stops. I don't count those other dozens probably. I mean, I'm talking about places I go and I stay for a week or 2 or months, even years, right? So I've spent like 18 years just in Asia, more than 6 years in Europe, about 5 in the Middle East, you know what I mean? Down here in Central America, probably, I don't know, year and a half, 2 years. So, I mean, a lot, right? And so the bottom line is, it's not about poverty, right? It's about, anthropologically, it's about culture. For instance, you read books like The Population Bomb and these sorts of things. And there's this idea, I remember being taught in high school, if you get enough people put together and they'll use these rat experiments, the rats start fighting each other. Okay, that sounded good when I'm in high school because you can show me overcrowded places where there's a lot of violence and that sort of thing. But now I'm somebody who's traveled the world a lot more than most of my teachers ever dreamed of, and I know that that's nonsense. For instance, Hong Kong, Mongkok, Hong Kong, where I spent months in 2019 and 20. I actually finally got kicked out of there, like I said, because I was opposing the Chinese Communist Party. But Mongkok, Hong Kong is the most densely populated area on Earth. It's by far, it's like 3 to 4 times more densely populated than Manhattan. and yet it's quite peaceful. It's quite safe, right? Except for that uprising against CCP. But I mean, in general, in regard to crime in general, it's actually very safe.
But
Why?
that's
Because they're
culture.
actually because they're civilized Hong Kongers. That's why. So, and most of those Hong Kongers, they live in apartments that are like the size of, an enlisted guy on a submarine would recognize it. It's like tiny, right?
Yeah,
Likewise,
and we would have
so
a
they're
similar
civilized.
experience in Ankara, in the poor sections of Ankara, Turkey. It's cultural. I hear
Yeah,
you. A lot of it is cultural, but I would
it's not. It's
argue,
not about poverty. It's not. I'm telling you, you could. I bet you could take. You go to Japan and you go into some of their apartments. Again, it's like Hong Kong, and a lot of the Japanese are not as rich as people think they are. Right? They're actually quite poor, but Japanese are actually civilized. Right? You could probably take 10 million Japanese and replace Guatemala with poor, just coming here with the shirts on their back, a bunch of Japanese, and replace the population here. And you give this place about 20 years, and this would be a mecca. This would be the new Singapore or something. You know what I mean? And it would be peaceful. You would have like 1/10 to 1/100th of armed people out here guarding things, because they're Japanese, and that some fish don't mix well in the same aquarium, period. Some are just culturally predacious. I mean, there are cultures that are perpetual victims. I'm always cautious of cultures that are always like, I'm the victim, I'm the victim. Those are the victimizing cultures, right? And there are cultures that are predators, period. Like Sweden has now found out, Now, those of us who travel the world know this, and we're not politically correct because we don't have time for that nonsense. That the political correctness is good for people that smoke a lot of dope and lay on their mother's couch, right? Now, the people who actually get out here and walk the line, they're way beyond that, right? And that's what's happening. Our border is wide open. Europe's borders don't exist. We don't actually have borders anymore. There's going to be severe violence in the United States. We're clearly going into a civil war. It's clear that millions of people are going to die through food issues, through just violence issues, through the World Economic Forum and Chinese Communist Party. Look at the fires that are happening all over the United States, right? We just had another fire in Texas, another mysterious fire. Of course, there's level X. There's always mysterious fires that occur at some level X, but we're way above level X on the food issues. We're
yeah,
way
we just had
above level X.
an explosion at a chemical factory in Texas. I want to share something, and this is a post of yours from last month. Let me know if you can see that. Now,
Yeah,
look at
that was
this.
in
This
Darien.
is the kind of talent that appears to be coming across the border in great numbers. So, I think
Yeah.
that's kind of what you're talking about, correct, Michael?
Yeah, he has a tattoo of a rifle by his eye, if you look closely. That's on my Twitter X page, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I made that video in one of the camps in Darien Gap. That guy by now is almost certainly in the United States. He's clearly a gangster, right? He acts like a gangster. He looks like a gangster. The duck is a duck, right? We have huge numbers of people like that coming through. There's numerous ecosystems, many ecosystems. There's people like him, straight up gangsters. By now, he may have already raped people in America. I do not know. I shouldn't say him, but that crowd is into the United States. Look at the accident. Not accident. There was 8 people just got killed in Texas in a high speed chase, which in one of the private chat
Right.
groups you and I are on, you saw that shared, right? This sort of stuff is daily. There is murder. There are murders and rapes daily by these people that are coming in. They are predacious. I mean, the bottom line is Venezuela has dumped out its prisons, and that's just one. Now, then there's that other ecosystem of Chinese that are coming. Look, there's huge amounts of marijuana farms in places like Maine, in places like Oklahoma, Oregon. Like, look at Maine. Maine is just riddled with Chinese marijuana farms. They're
Right.
taking over the
Neil
United
Monroe has
States.
just did a really good article on that, looking at these marijuana farms that are owned by Chinese nationals.
Yeah, Neil Monroe. I wonder if he would like to come down with us down to the Panama. I mean, people like that are on this need to. We have to continue. We already have good organizations, but we need to continue to make them bigger, better, stronger, because nobody can win this alone. And what Neil exposed in Maine is quite important.
we talked about the Silk Road. We talked about there are influences. There are nations that are weaponizing this migrant, this border crisis, and we don't know who's coming through. You might recall last winter we did a podcast. Sheena Rodriguez was on with us, and you were in the Darien Gap at the time. Or no, you had just come back, but you had all but interrogated several Chinese nationals that had come through the Gap and all military age, and you seem to feel that they were military or certainly intelligence trained as well.
Some clearly are. Others have no idea. And there are family units that come through as well. Perfect cover. Why are all these Chinese coming through when they have this giant economy and the Chinese Communist Party's, again, a country riddled with Starbucks? I've been all over China. I mean, the place is, they are a massive economic powerhouse. Of course, we all know they have problems, but so do we, right? The whole world has problems right now. But just because they have problems doesn't mean that they're not on the march. They are on the march, physically on the march, economically on the march, politically on the march, and information war is a tsunami. I mean, every day as we speak, there are flights heading to Quito, Ecuador. They're in the air right now. Some are in the airport right now, every single day. Huge numbers of Chinese are entering Quito, Ecuador. They stay in specific hotels. We know those hotels. Then they go to Colombia. We know the hotels. They fill up the entire hotels. Some of them fly directly to Mexico City or Cancun. Others fly directly to the United States.
So
others go through the Darien
obviously,
Gap.
someone's paying for this. So the Chinese Communist
Yep.
Party, do you believe, is paying for all these people coming here?
There's
From
many
the,
different sorts coming through, and who's actually paying for what is unknown to us. Now, when we talk with Chinese, whether it's in Yuma or San Diego or places in Texas or down in Darien, they'll often say, if they're down in Darien, they'll often say they paid about $20,000 so far to get that far, to get through Darien. So from China through Quito, through that ecosystem. Then once we see them in Yuma, often they'll say about 30,000. So that's another 10,000. They're paying big bucks, right? Compared to the other people like Haitians, they'll come in, a few $100 and just work their way up like something from the old like backpackers do basically. And
I mean,
anybody
represents a significant investment at the end of the day, coming from
huge.
when you look at what the annual per capita income or the average income is in China. The question is, they obviously plan to recoup that and more.
They're going to take all of America. They're going to take. Listen, this is very important. This other part that I'll tell you. As you know, the Chinese Communist Party tells its people that everybody, and they're very public about this globally, all Chinese with Chinese genes fall under their jurisdiction, under their law, under Chinese law, and owes their allegiance. If you have Chinese genes, the Chinese Communist Party claims you owe your allegiance to the Chinese Communist Party. That's key, right? Now, next, the Chinese Communist Party claims, and by the way, there's people in Panama that have been in Panama since building the railroad, so more than like 170 years or so, 160 years. They've been there a long time, and they've never been to China. They're never going to go to China, but they still speak Cantonese in many cases, and they're not. And the Chinese Communist Party claims that they owe their genetic allegiance to the Chinese Communist Party. Next part is vital. The Chinese Communist Party claims that the people who came over the land bridge, as in this theory of migration, that they were actually Chinese. So all these Indians, about 50% of this country here in Guatemala, almost 50%, are indigenous people, right? And down in all through the Americas, all down to the tip of South America, all through Panama, there are huge amounts of indigenous people, right? Of many sorts. The Chinese Communist Party claim that they are Chinese. So they claim that Chinese got here first, and therefore all this land, we stole it. So they're coming to take it, right? And they have justified this to the invaders. These Chinese coming through are straight up invaders. They're coming to take your house. They're not coming to open up Chinese restaurants and laundries. They're coming to take over NASA. They're coming to take over the FBI and the CIA and all the infrastructure and all that stuff our nuclear weapons, and everything. This is like a fungus that takes over an ant colony.
So why are they getting so much support from the Biden administration and the Uniparty?
Captured. It's like a fungus that takes over an ant colony. The information game is severe. I mean, it is absolutely intense. And the World Economic Forum and the Chinese Communist Party are co-sanguinated. They are Siamese twins. They share blood flow. Now, who actually started the World Economic Forum is in question at this point. But it's clear that the Chinese Communist Party, the World Economic Forum and the Chinese Communist Party they have meetings each year in Davos and China and other parts of the world. And the Chinese Communist Party clearly has massive influence at the World Economic Forum. Listen, governors like Greg Abbott of Texas, he's a member of the World Economic Forum, who is this close with the Chinese Communist Party, right? They're that close. That's like Nazi. And now, often when you compare Nazis to something, it's way over the top and it should not even be done. But there are some instances where it is absolutely appropriate. The reason that the Hong Kongers call the Chinese Communist Party Chi-Nazis is because they behave racially. They're a fascist organism who has a huge racial component. That's what Nazism actually was. Nazism was fascism plus huge racial component, right? I don't mean little f fascism, not the big F fascism of Italy. But the bottom line is these two work together, and the World Economic Forum is when they have this relationship like Nazi Germany with fascist Italy. They're that close, right? And the question is who's zooming who here? Does the Chinese Communist Party have? I'm sorry, do they have mutual influence over each other or not? It looks to us that the Chinese Communist Party is the dominant partner in that relationship. In other words, the World Economic Forum is their puppet on a string, right? So in other words, it's not an equal relationship. Klaus Schwab, he's very pro-Xi, he's very pro-Chinese Communist Party, Bill Gates, the whole works. It looks like the World Economic Forum party is also, they're not equal partners. They're co-sanguinated, but one is smaller than the other, and the Chinese Communist Party is the partner running the show.
Interesting. And it's obvious, Biden himself is captive. It's really a case of a Manchurian candidate in so many respects. You just have to follow the money. But
all respects, not equivocal. He is clearly a Manchurian candidate, as was Obama. And this didn't start with Obama. This started before Obama's and any of our grandparents were born. This started a long time ago, right? And now the trees are quite large and they're bearing poison fruit.
I was posting a lot during the 2 weeks ago. There was a Senate hearing, and they had Ray of the FBI and Mayorkas at DHS in front of me. And all these guys did was, refuse to answer questions. I mean, you could tell the frustration of a few of the America First senators who were in the hearing. But it's obvious they're not doing anything to stem this tide at the border. In fact, they've been encouraging it. We've talked about imagine you're in New York City facing huge budget deficits. Even in the small city I live in of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, we're facing for the first time in ages a budget deficit, yet they're more than happy to find ways to give monies to illegal aliens so they can resettle here. It's insane. And it's down. So it's really from the national down to the municipal level in many places.
Yeah, this is very important. You just brought up maybe the most important point of our entire conversation, and that's paradigms, right? You mentioned it's insane, or which is a way of saying it's crazy, or I'm surprised by it, right? If the way you're looking at the world is accurate, you will not be surprised about what happens next. You might not know what happens next, but you won't be surprised at it when it does happen, right? But if your paradigm of what's actually unfolding is accurate, It will be far more predictive than just chance, and you won't be surprised by anything. If at any point you're going, that's crazy, or that's insane, or oh, I'm so surprised they would do that. That means your paradigm's off. So you have to recalculate, like your GPS in your car, recalculate route, right? So now, my paradigm, I'm not surprised by anything. My paradigm is that the Chinese Communist Party and the World Economic Forum are destroying and taking Europe and the United States and other places like Japan. Nothing about this surprises me. It's not insane. It's a war strategy. Now, it's insane for people who's got the fungus in their brain because they're going to get eaten up. They are insane. But the fact is, this is a war plan that's unfolding. And, after Biden was installed, I was there for the so-called inauguration. I flew straight to the border at El Paso, and I was immediately publishing. I would not be surprised to see that they start dismantling the wall, because that is in my paradigm. They haven't physically dismantled the wall, but they basically, the border no longer exists. It's not there anymore, right? So, a lot of the wall is still there, but the border is just, it's not there.
It's interesting, and it's hard sometimes, Michael, because you go down that rabbit hole, and when you, like you said, you realize, okay, this is going to happen. It's pretty dark. I'll show you. Behind me, I keep a painting, and it's from the late 18th century. It's of Tata Tratin. He was a Lithuanian nobleman who was one of the enfranchised Poles who could vote in the Sejm. And what they're doing behind me is the Poles are literally voting to partition Poland among the neighboring powers, some to Russia, some to Austria, some to Prussia. And the nobles were all fine with this. Now, Tata Tratin, what he did, the picture is of him. He's literally throwing himself in front of the doors to keep them from going out and promulgating the vote. So you talk about the fungus. They had gotten a hold of the nobility. They could take advantage of the need to have universal agreement in the Sejm and what they were voting for. So the nationalists couldn't fight back, and Poland literally disappeared. And I keep a collection of Montaigne's essays with me, and he was writing a lot during the French Reformation. That's when the Catholics and the Huguenots were going at it, the Catholics and the Protestants, and they were all ethnic French, but they were killing each other. And he said, the interesting thing about civil war is it makes us sentinels in our own home. And he would talk about when there was a point where he was the mayor of a small city, and in the weekends he would go by horseback to his estate. And his fear was if he came across a crossroad and there were Huguenots there, he was a known Roman Catholic. They could kill him. And I think of, Yugoslavia in the early 90s. It became normal to see, dad show up from work driving in a technical with, I forget the caliber of the 50 cal for the Soviets, but that would be in the back. 12.7 millimeter in the back. When I do look down the road at this, and I was telling someone, I know what the cake will be when I see the ingredients.
Where did that come from? That's a beautiful statement.
I thought it up. I was talking to Jeff Nolan, who writes for The Hill, and he said, I hope,
yeah.
I can tell what the cake will be. Just show me the ingredients. And the ingredients are, my God.
I'm going to have to quote you on that. I mean, yeah.
Cool.
I see the temperature setting that you got there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's I'm looking at the ingredients, and that's why, yeah. And so the
you've been looking
you're
at
making red velvet cake.
Yeah, and you've been looking at the ingredients for a long time, Michael. I mean,
Yeah.
you were following these migration routes for years and, trying to get people to listen to you. And it's tragic that we haven't. And just hoping we can find a way to take back control of the country from these captive peoples. And I was doing a podcast with this fellow Tom Luongo. He's kind of a anarcho libertarian. He has a website or newsletter called Guns, Goats, and Gold. And his insight into what Powell is doing at the Federal Reserve, has nothing to do with fighting inflation, but everything to do with fighting the WEF. And what he said was, when Klaus Schwab said, "You will own nothing and like it," well, think about it. The Wall Street bankers. These are the alpha males who like their stuff. Their response was, "Up yours." And what Powell is doing, the high interest rates are going to hurt us, but it will crush Europe and the WEF. And maybe being financially free of these and cutting loose this flows of cash that seem to be going to the federal, state, county, and local levels of our government officials might allow us to extricate ourselves from this. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there's this is a very complex war plan, of which the aliens invasion is one aspect. Also, food security, economic, of course, inflation, so many different things. We're clearly going into famines globally, right? Doesn't mean everybody in the world's going to starve to death. That's not going to happen. But clearly, many people are going to starve to death, and that's going to create a lot of HOP, human osmotic pressure. The human osmotic pressure, that push and the pull of migration. And that HOP will push people through South America, into South America, up through the Darien. That's why I spend so much time. I'm in Guatemala. This is right along that corridor. After they come to South America, they go right by here, right? And so they go right through Guatemala. They cross into Mexico, mostly at Tapachula, where we've been actually looking at that before, and a team just went through. The Rubin brothers and Taylor Kramer just went through there. They're going up there now. And so the bottom line is, this is a multi-faceted war plan. It's a combined arms attack. In military parlance, it's just not artillery at this point yet. And information war is what's making information war is the fungus that's allowing this to happen.
Right. And how would someone vaccinate themselves from this fungus, Michael?
Some of us seem to be more resilient to begin with for some reason. I don't know what that is. I thought about it. A good book to read on this is called Rape of the Mind by Joost Meerlo, 1956. Very good book. I've recommended it many, many times. And I think reading that book in and of itself is a form of vaccination, because it shows you the tricks that they're going to use, right? And I've told people before, like, I'm going to brainwash you in certain ways, like Billy Jack in the movie. I'm going to put my left foot on the right side of your face, whatever, and there's nothing you can do about it, right? Even as I've told you that's what I'm going to do, you're not going to be able to stop it unless you have made yourself resistant to it. It's like a martial art. I'm going to kick you in the face. There's nothing you can do about it, right? Now, the people that actually have trained and know how to do, they can be resistant to it. Not only that, they might be the one that kicks me down. I've talked to people that are really studying information war and trying to make their families and friends and communities more resilient against information war. I say, listen, go to these people that are using information war against you and use that martial art on them. Try to get, and so don't just play defense. Play offense, right? First of all, don't let them get you in the chokehold, and try to choke them out of their system, right? Because it can be done, right? And so it's not like that they're some titanium thing that can't be penetrated. You can penetrate right back. Learn the rules of the game. Read books like Persuasion by Cialdini. I think Cialdini I think he probably works on the enemy side, but he's quite brilliant. I read that book many years ago with a cousin of mine who was a special forces officer. We were actually in a book. It was a long time ago, somewhere up in maybe Washington State. And we're going through the psychology section, and we're looking for, and he pulls up this book and he goes, hey, this one should be good for brainwashing, because we're in or I was, and he still was.
Right. I mean,
and SF guys are always about mind stuff, right? It's not just guns and Navy SEAL kicking a door or something. We're about more that and mind stuff, right? And he goes, this will be, so we agree, we both bought a copy. We both read it, and then we discussed it. We still talk about it sometimes. And now I think Cialdini, the author of that, so Persuasion is a good book, and read Rape of the Mind. These things are vaccinations for you, and then start using those techniques on your enemies, right? Most of the people watching this are not wild-eyed liberals, right? So we have to talk openly among, and some of it will, of course, leak to the enemy, but like Sam Walton of Walmart, I read his book, Made in America. He's like, the best thing to do is just share with your friendly team the information, knowing some of it will leak out and be detrimental to Walmart and Sam's and that sort of thing. But ultimately, there'll be a net gain by sharing information with your associates, even when it's open, right? So that's what I'm doing now. Read Persuasion, read Rape of the Mind, and that will give you the handhold to go further, and you'll see the tricks that are being used on you. You won't get in those headlocks quite as easily.
Fantastic. Well, Michael, we're at 45 minutes, a little over. How can people find you, and how can they support the great work that you're doing?
Thank you. I'm on Substack. My name is Michael Yon, of course, YON, Yankee Oscar November. And I'm on X every day, old Twitter, Michael_Yon. And Big Honey 6 is my call sign for Operation Burning Hedge. I went ahead and put that on the top. And then I'm on locals.com. Publish there often. And then but that's it. And insofar as support since 2005 in the Iraq War, I've been all user supported. That's how I stay free, because most people don't donate very much, and therefore nobody can actually own me. Nobody can say, I'll cut you off if you say such and such or don't say such and such. Whereas you see some of these huge programs are quite controlled. And like, Fox versus CNN, those are actually both controlled.
Well, fantastic, Michael. And I'll be putting this, it's streaming live on X right now, but I'll put a recording up on YouTube, and I'll have your contact information on that, and we can refer back to it. But again, this has been fantastic. Please reach out, support Michael and his work. And Michael, thanks so much for being a guest today.
Thanks, Kevin. And come on down here. We got work to do in Central America.
That we do. Hey, support us too, because that will allow me to go down to the, that was an amazing week I spent in McAllen and the Rio Grande Valley with you guys. It was amazingly eye-opening. And you do kind of need to, particularly in my position, do you remember, Michael, like when you do martial arts training, they talk about the direct transmission. Like you can learn from a student of a student of a student of a master. But when you're with the master and you're down doing the work, you're going to learn so much on so many different levels. So that's why it is important to be down in places like that and be there with folks like yourself, and you're amassing a great team around you right now. Those are all great folks, really dedicated, bright, and you're the pointy edge of the counterattack. Again, Michael.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you. I was going to say Ann Vandersteel is hard at work as well.
Oh, yeah. Ann is fantastic.
Masako Ganaha and others that you met on Burning Edge that will go unnamed. But there are people that are doing incredible work on Operation Burning Edge. You are absolutely welcome to come with us in Central America. And the only reason that we're here is because this has direct effect on the United States. Panama is absolutely vital.
Right on. Thanks so much, Michael. Have a great day.
Thanks, Kevin. Bye-bye.